Welcome, everyone. This is the first quarter 2023 all hands meeting of the Open Voice Network. We welcome you all here today. And as we move on to the next slide, we will take a look at the agenda. Of course, we start with our introduction and welcome, which I know everybody looks forward to. Will be followed by the Executive Director report. And then we'll focus on two initiatives. Number one, our TrustMark program, and number two, the work that's been done on interoperability, followed up by some closing remarks from our Executive Director, Jon Stine. And then I ask everyone to stick around for the second half hour, where it will be an open Q&A session. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A section of the webinar itself, and then we will get to those at the bottom of the hour. Next slide, please. So, my name is Michael Novak. I'm with the Open Voice Network. Our mission is to make voice worthy of user trust, and the guiding values that help us achieve that objective in our mission are trust, choice, inclusivity, and openness. Next slide. And as I mentioned, please put your questions. If you have any answers, you can put them in the Q&A as well, but putting your questions there will be at least a good start. Next slide, please. So as a meeting of the Open Voice Network, we will begin and end at our scheduled time. And the first half of this hour-long program will be recorded and stored in our Google Public Shared Drive. The second half of the program for the question and answers will not be recorded to encourage an open exchange of ideas and comments. And as a member of the Linux Foundation, keep in mind that these meetings involve participation by industry competitors, and it is the intention of the Linux Foundation to conduct all of its activities in accordance with applicable antitrust and competitive laws. It is therefore extremely important that attendees adhere to meeting agendas and be aware of and not participate in any activities that are prohibited under applicable U.S. state, federal, or foreign antitrust and competitive laws. Examples of types of actions that are prohibited at Linux Foundation meetings and in connection with Linux Foundation activities are described in the Linux Foundation antitrust policy available at the website shown on your screen. If you have any questions about these matters, please contact your company counsel, or if you are a member of the Linux Foundation, feel free to contact Andrew Updegrove of the firm of Gesmer Updegrove LLP, which provides profoundly great legal counsel to the Linux Foundation. And with that, I would like to pass over the virtual microphone to our Executive Director, Jon Stine, for his report. Good morning, Jon.
There we go. Michael, thank you for the introduction, and Nathan, thank you for hosting this. And colleagues, thank you for joining us today. If we've not met, I'm Jon Stine, Executive Director of the Open Voice Network, and let's start with perhaps the most important part of my report to you today in this Q1 2023 all hands meeting. Nathan, next slide, please. And that is to say thank you. Dankeschön. Merci beaucoup. Your work and your support of the Open Voice Network has enabled us over the past 2.5 to 3 years to take substantial strides and to assert a new vision, perhaps, one of ethical use, one of voice that is worthy of user trust, one of interoperability, one of privacy, security. You know the list, but you've enabled us to assert that in this always changing and exciting conversational AI ecosystem, this very exciting conversational AI industry. In 2022, we have much to be proud of, much to be, and from my side, much to be grateful for. The thought leadership across a number of topics, and you see them listed here on the screen, but thought leadership, researched, asserted, published, communicated, publicized. You know, when you say what's the value of thought leadership? It's the assertion of ideas into the marketplace that suggest this can be different, this can be better. These are the issues we need to be thinking about. Here are the opportunities. In the marketplace of ideas, the Open Voice Network was extremely active in 2022, and thank you for that. And in our public presence, from events to boot camps, webinars, podcasts, posts on social media, any part of this that you played in either one of these, as perhaps as simple as reposting a LinkedIn post, as critical as writing a section of a paper, thank you. Thank you for what you've done in 2022, and thank you for where you have helped the Open Voice Network to get to in 2022. Nathan, next slide. Now, where are we? And let's take a moment on this slide. I will try not to prattle on, but in 2022, the world changed for conversational AI. A major set of market transitions, and the Open Voice Network in 2023 must not only respond to those, but seek to get ahead of them. But in 2022, we saw, if you will, a confirmation that voice as a channel had failed to monetize. We saw what happened at Google. We saw it happened at Amazon. We saw what's happened at SoundHound. We've seen a number of things that suggested what was the, kind of conventional wisdom of 2021, 2020, 2019 really didn't come to fruition. We also saw that, according to the analysts, you take a look at the Gartner hype cycle and others, voice defined it a channel in the trough of disillusionment. And happening at the same time are these things here on the right side of the screen. James Poulter has, taught us from his Vixen Labs reports, this is a normative behavior. The use of voice, of conversational AI, is a normative behavior. More than a third of US adults, and in the UK and in Deutschland, use voice on a daily basis. These are numbers that are in the 90s to, hundreds, 130s of millions of people using voice daily. A second thing, for all the news up in Seattle, Alexa's not going away. Google Home's not going away. Siri's not going away. There's a very strong installed base, and not only in smart speakers, as we know, but in smartphones and automobiles and smart home. Voice has a presence. There is, according to the analysts, this rising enterprise investment in conversational AI, and it has a 20 to 25% compound annual growth rate, running close to a 20 billion on annual basis investment across the enterprise worldwide. That's serious money. There is a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Ethical use, synthetic voice, deep fakes, we keep hearing that phrase. And then here in November, December, and currently right now, you can't cross the street without talking about generative AI, large language models, and ChatGPT. Shifts, changes, market transitions, the rules are being rewritten, and thus the Open Voice Network must respond. Next slide. And in that response, we had a conversation, many of you may have sat in on our interoperability webinar, which is in November, a great event, and congratulations again to Jim Larson, Debbie Dahl, and the team that put that together. But Bradley Metrock, and many of you know Bradley, Project Voice Capital Partners, said to us in that session, what's his, and I asked Bradley the question, what would you say to the Open Voice Network? And he said, you must matter. You must matter more in 2023 than perhaps you do today. And those words sank in. How do you operationally define mattering to an ecosystem? How do you define mattering to decision makers? Well, the market will tell us if we matter. The market will. And we'll see that in endorsements of an ethical use guideline set and framework that has the working title of TrustMark program. We'll see that in use and trial of interoperability specifications and protocols. We'll see that in sponsorship and contribution conversations. The open voice network must be relevant, must be immediate. And if we write a headline by the middle of year 2023, that news article, Associated Press, dated San Francisco, California, Linux Foundation, Open Voice Network, would say the Open Voice Network TrustMark Initiative. And we're going to be putting that before our steering committee tomorrow for first steps of approval. But that initiative about ethical use and definition has been endorsed by these industry leaders. And the interoperability protocols of the Open Voice Network have been tested and endorsed by these industry leaders. Are we relevant? Are we immediate? Is this important today and tomorrow? We must matter in 2023, and by God, we will. Next slide. Where and how do we pivot toward immediacy and relevance? Again, this is a working title, and we're in conversation. OED is going to be presenting this to our steering committee, first steps of it tomorrow. But a TrustMark initiative, it's ethical use, it's defining the issues, providing education, providing tools for evidential self-assessment, looking at intention of an organization as expressed in policies, looking across the verticals, and in an age of large language models and generative AI. We have been asked for this. We have end users around the world who know and seek. They wish to be seen on the good side, wish to be able to say to their clients and their customers, we believe in these things. And so an emphasis on the TrustMark initiative, an emphasis on the interoperability of conversational assistants. And right now we are prioritizing, and it's a fascinating conversation. The group met yesterday. They've identified more than 30 different modules, separate pieces of action, content, process, getting something done that will enable a future of interoperability, sharing dialogues, text and context from one assistant to the other. Now, moving that in the discussion yesterday and the discussion happening this quarter is moving that towards specifications, stuff you can use, and also making sure that it's relevant in some or more of our industry verticals. We'll take a look at that in a moment. And then we're going to talk about executive education on the value of voice. Less of the technologies, because we have plenty of people talking about the technologies. But it's the value of voice, it's the ethical use of voice, it's the value of generative AI and large language models. It's where all this is going. And the questions arising from the enterprise community are, what do I do? Who do I trust? What do I trust? What questions must I ask? And you'll hear more about this as we develop through the quarter. TrustMark Initiative, interoperability, and then webinars, podcasts, executive education. Next slide, Nathan. You need to ask, who's the targets? Who are we trying to talk to? I don't know that we've done a good job in defining this, but let me share this. Our first and most important audience of the Open Voice Network's work, in fact, our primary constituency, are those who will use our standards in their work day to day. These would be platforms. These would be developers and technologists. And every audience, and this is something, again, we need to have a greater focus on as we talk about relevance and immediacy. is the WIFM. It's a phrase that I picked up and heard through my career. Many of you have already heard that. It stands for What's in It for Me. We all have our WIFM, and especially regards to the Open Voice Network, we must be listening to the WIFMs of our constituents. We'll have more conversations. One of our tasks in Q1 is to do a much better job of capturing and listening to those WIFMs from all of you. But perhaps a WIFM for this first constituency is, what are the specifications? What's the code that I can use to make more money and work faster, cheaper, better? Make more money and save time. Can the Open Voice Network be providing that? I think we can, but let's keep that with them in mind. A second, those whose business will grow through our standards and our guideline, whose business will grow. These are enterprise conversational AI owners, decision makers in big brands. These are the consultants who work across and provide solution, guidance, and implementation. The WIFM here are these standards that can be used on behalf of their clients, and are these standards that will expand business. Will they level the field? Will they be endorsed by my vendors? Will they give me a broader ecosystem of vendors I can choose from? All very valuable economic WIFMs for that second group. And then third, those who shape the conventional wisdom of the industry. Analysts, advisors, venture capitalists. The WIFM here is that they know what's going on and they're at the front of what is happening in a rapidly changing industry. If the Open Voice Network has news and is reshaping the industry as we believe we are, it's in our communication to them and being under their spotlight and answering tough questions. But they trust, and most important, their constituencies are groups, audiences number 1 and number 2. If 1 and 2 believe the work of the Open Voice Network is usable and valuable, then they're going to be listening to us as well. Next slide. Headline deliverables. This is what's been placed and will be placed in front of our board tomorrow. I'm giving you a preview. They may make changes, but this is what we're thinking about. Q1 2023, what's our focus? 6 headline deliverables. We launch a TrustMark program. And this program is endorsed and supported by at least 5 organizations across our target audiences, referring to the slide before. We publish and test our first interoperability specifications. And we are looking at test bed trials pledged by more than 5 organizations. We've established and defined our top areas of interoperability immediacy within vertical industries, within horizontal capabilities, immediate and relevant. Next slide, please. We build our sponsor and contributor pipeline. We're at a point where we need to continue to build our sponsor base, our participant base, our contributor base. That's primarily my job, but believe me, I welcome introductions. I welcome information. We can all be helping on this. We launch a Friends WIFM program. Many of you are friends of the Open Voice Network. Very easy, you signed up, we traded logos. That's not good enough from a lot of perspectives, and certainly from the leadership team's perspective. What value can we be providing you? And I think there's significant value that we can share back and forth. Those of you who are friends, stand by. We anticipate launching a new effort that will provide value for both of us. And then finally launching that executive education program. We've been approached by, and this is not a secret, we don't have any courses yet, but we've been approached by the Royal College of Art in London, prestigious organization. They have a computer science and data science wing. Can we help them put together executive education, tying their service design coursework to that? And we're partnering with Hans van Dam, the Conversation Design Institute, in a lot of this. and University of Central Florida. Again, getting the word out, not just about the Open Voice Network, but about the value of voice in the enterprise, value of voice in healthcare. Next slide. Where and which verticals are we looking? Now, this, as you take a look at this slide, verticals and horizontals, we're in the process of making decisions. I think our final list will be, instead of the 9 that are shown here, maybe 4, maybe 5. But where can the Open Voice Network, again, with the immediacy and relevancy theme, where can we bring the greatest value, and to whom? Going back to the developers, the conversation AI decision makers, the analysts. Is it in automotive, healthcare, social gaming? You go down the list. Is it, and what can we provide for those who are making significant investments in using conversational AI and customer service? What value do we bring to those who are the enterprise content owners, and to those who are asking questions about voice-enabled passwordless payment and authentication? What can we provide? Again, we're asking these questions, and we'll speak more about that as we close the meeting today. Nathan, I believe that's the end of my presence here.
Yes, thank you, Jon. That was fantastic. So I do remind people that chat is now enabled, so you can make use of that. But if you do have questions, please do put them in the Q&A section, and we will address those at the end of the presentations. So next up, we have Oida Coleman, who's a senior advisor for the Open Voice Network, to talk about our TrustMark program. Good morning, Oida.
Good morning, good afternoon. Can everyone hear me okay?
Hear you fine.
We can hear you fine.
All right. Well, first, let me start by expressing my sincere gratitude for the volunteers and supporters of the Ethical Use Task Force and the Privacy and Security Work Group. The information that I present today reflects the collective work of those team members, and in particular, Emily Banzaf, Valeria Barbero, and Nick Myers. Thank you for your leadership of these groups over the past couple of years. Jon talked about why Open Voice Network must matter, why we must provide relevancy and immediacy with our work. The Open Voice Network's motto is voice worthy of user trust. And over the past 1.5 years, we have published several versions of our white papers on the topics of privacy, security, and ethical use, describing key principles and guidelines. And while the papers were well received, there was also the nagging "so what" question. Although the principles and guidelines resonated, how do we move from the what to the how? How do we make them relevant to organizations, developers, enterprise leaders, and other constituent groups? After over 20 interviews with members of our steering committee, industry leaders, potential sponsors, and supporters of the Open Voice Network, all of these really since October 2022, there has been increased validation for us to consider creating a program to provide actionable steps to put our privacy, security, and ethical principles into practice. Nathan, next slide. Allow me to describe the Open Voice Network TrustMark program. Again, actionable steps towards relevancy and immediacy to make voice worthy of user trust. The TrustMark program is based on an ethical code, a code that both, one, respects rights of privacy based on global regulations and legislation. Regulations and legislation such as GDPR, EDPB, and US state privacy legislation such as CCPA, for example. But there are also NIST, W3C, FTC, other regulations that we bring and that we're basing our work on. The second part of the ethical code is to promote values of transparency, accountability, inclusivity, and sustainability, guided by ethical AI literature and best practices. So our published white papers, specifically the ethical guidelines for voice experiences and the privacy guidelines specific to voice, reflect this ethical code and provides the what. The TrustMark program provides the how, an ethical code specifically for conversational AI in order to, one, define and assert the critical ethical issues, two, offer a guide to best practice implementation, three, enable public identification of those who implement the program, and lastly, to mitigate risk for developers, client, and the public. So putting the ethical code into actions. And so this is demonstrated by a program that provides badges and certifications for individuals as well as organizations. The three pillars or the three-part initiative includes education, intention, and evidence. So there's education, intention, and evidence. And I'll drill into further down to what we mean by that in a bit. Nathan, next slide. So as I mentioned, ethical code. If you're familiar with our ethical guidelines document, you're familiar with these ethical principles that we have defined: privacy, sustainability, inclusivity, accountability, transparency, all wrapped with a governance and compliance as principles as well. Nathan, next slide. So let's describe those three things that I mentioned: education, intention, and evidence. So in the ethical code, in order to demonstrate specific actions demonstrated by education, the first step is developing a no-cost introductory course with the Linux Foundation on ethics and conversational AI. And as Jon mentioned, we'll be piloting executive education programs with partner organizations as well, which would fit within that. And these are, and I will say, as you see the names of what these badges and certifications, these are just working titles. And I put these here just so for you to understand what it is we're trying to achieve. So with the training courses for individuals, envision a TrustMark individual advocate badge. And so those things would fall under the education pillar of the program. The next is intention. So intention, publish policies and guidelines to describe how implementation of the ethical principles. And along with that, we're developing a self-assessment and maturity model for organizations to see where they are on the maturity continuum. And so imagine a badge for an organization, a TrustMark certified organization badge as part of that. And then there's the evidence. Evidence in, again, published policies and guidelines. And then based on our interviews, we've heard a lot about the need, not just for programs for auditing the process, but how do we provide technology solutions such as synthetic voice detection, trusted agent watermarks. All of these things would fall under technology solutions. But then there's if you're familiar with programs such as ISO 27001, for example, where you have independent organizations coming in to do audits of how you are adhering to the practices, to the guidelines. And so under intention, that's an internal thing that is self-assessment, but the evidence part of the audit of the not just I say or express that I'm doing these things, but someone, an outside organization coming in and validating that you are adhering to the guidelines. So this is the evidence base. So 3 things: education, intention, and evidence. Next slide. So Jon mentioned relevancy. And so just really want to take the time to describe how do we make this relevant? What is the relevancy of a TrustMark program across the organization? So to the C-suite, have we, the questions for them to ask is, have we created internal policies that support accountability for voice-specific ethical principles? To product and design, do we have well-defined processes for voice-specific ethical requirements as part of the product design lifecycle? To development and implementation, does our R&D organization consider ethical requirements as part of a minimal viable product delivery? To education and training, have we established internal educational programs to educate the entire organization on voice-specific ethical principles? And to customers, do we transparently share with our customers our commitment to ethical principles and solicit their feedback? So relevancy across the organization, this program of education, intention, and evidence encompasses roles within the organization for them to understand what is their part in ensuring that we make voice worthy of user trust. And so in closing, we ask you to partner with us, share your thoughts, and let us know what your requirements are. Sign on to become an early adopter, support our work, attend our work group meetings. You can find our meeting calendars on the website. Ask questions. Our next important step, as Jon mentioned, is we have a meeting tomorrow with the steering committee. This is a very important meeting for us to gain their support and to address any questions or concerns that they have to allow us to launch the program in Q1. So stay tuned for more details. Reach out if you need additional information, and thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Oida. That was great. So next up, we have Dr. Deborah Dahl, who's a senior advisor with the Open Voice Network, to speak on our interoperability. So Dr. Dahl, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very excited to be talking about the interoperability work that we've been doing in the Open Voice Network. We've made a tremendous amount of progress in the last few months, and it's very exciting to see not only the progress, but the momentum that will be continuing through Q1 of 2023. The work that I'm going to be talking about is based on the work of the architecture work group, which is a very active and thoughtful group of individuals who are looking at what we can do to promote interoperability among agents. The leader of that group is Jim Larson, and there's also been a tremendous amount of contributions from Bruce Epstein. So I think the whole group, the whole Open Voice Network is very grateful to the architecture work group for this really amazing effort. So we can go to the next slide, please. So interoperability, I'm going to be I think it's a very simple concept. Assistance from whatever developed by whatever organizations, using whatever platforms, collaborating to solve user problems. Our goal is that these agents will collaborate using standard messages that we'll be defining. We won't have the kinds of silos that we have now, where only assistants can collaborate with other assistants on their that are developed on their own platform. So as Jon said, we're focusing now on selected verticals and horizontals to really bring these interoperability concepts to life with actual examples, with the real significant types of verticals and horizontals. So that, as Jon said, the verticals that we're looking at are automotive, healthcare, gaming, financial services, restaurants, and smart home. We'll be narrowing these down. There's probably way too broad for our group to handle by itself. And then the sort of the parallel horizontals of enterprise customer service, which can be across any horizontals, and enterprise content management, and payments. So those will kind of correlate with the verticals. We can look at the next slide. So one of the most important things that we've defined in the last few months is what we call interoperability patterns. And those are the actual details of how one assistant contacts another assistant and asks it to do work. So instead of what we have now, either an assistant tries to do everything itself and really can't do that much because no single piece of software can do everything, or it tries to hand it off to another assistant that's part of its own platform, its own ecosystem. So our first type of interoperability pattern is what we call delegation, where an assistant says, okay, I can't handle this. Let's say your smart speaker, you ask a question of your smart speaker about your bank account. It knows that it can't handle that. It delegates that conversation to another assistant that might have been developed totally independently by your bank. The other kind of pattern that we've defined is called mediation, where the one assistant can't do it by itself, but it behind the scenes has a conversation with another assistant to find out how to deal with the user's need. And the third pattern that we've worked on is called channeling, where one assistant provides dialogue services to another. So it handles the text-to-speech and the speech recognition. So those are this interoperability patterns that we've been working with. And let's go to the next slide. Based on that, the work with the patterns, we've begun an effort of synthesizing the work items that we need to accomplish to achieve interoperability. This is actually a very ambitious activity that we've realized that the full spectrum of achieving interoperability is going to depend on what we call focus items. We've identified 33 focus items, organized them into 7 clusters. So we're going to have to be zeroing in on the few top priority items at first. So the clusters are very important aspects of agent interaction. First of all, the agent interaction itself, where one agent contacts another agent and gives it information to achieve the user's goal. Execution control, how do the agents control each other? The trust and integrity and security is a whole cluster that's extremely important when you have agents that were developed by different organizations communicating with each other. It's very important to ensure that the proper controls are taken into account for keeping that information that passes around, keeping it secure and trusted. And we also have data flow, where just the data goes back. How do we control the data among agents, assistants, the whole voice ecosystem? and data integrity, keeping data safe while it's passed around, making sure that it's not poisoned or damaged by being passed around among agents, and the building blocks, which are the core technical pieces of interoperability. I'll give you an example of one of those in a second. So we have, based on these focus items, we've selected 6 high priority things that need to be done first, and we'll develop these and work them out in the context of the couple of high priority use cases that we'll be working on. So this will give us a really focused demonstration of how interoperability is working and how it's going to grow as we continue working on these focus items. We can go to the next slide. So probably the most mature one of our focus items, I'll give you that as an example. It's called dialogue packets. It's part of the building blocks cluster. It's just the basic format that collaborating assistants need to pass around user requests between assistants. So the user asks for something and that information is passed on to another assistant. This format is what we call dialogue packets. And we have, we're in the process of standardizing the format. It's not complete, but it's far enough along that we can illustrate it with some Python and JavaScript libraries that we're working on now that eventually, probably fairly soon, will be made available in public GitHub repos for people to experiment with. So this is just an example of the dialogue packet. This is a user request. And if you look down, there's a lot of information in it that a assistant might use to decide what to do. But the key elements here are the value. So this user said, what is the weather forecast for tomorrow? But the user might also, given speech recognition's uncertainty, the user might also have said, what is the weather forecast for Tuesday? So this assistant is going to ask another, it's going to pass this information on to another assistant, maybe a weather expert, which can decide which one of these is what the user really said and provide an answer and send it back to the first assistant. So this is what we're working on right now in the dialogue packets, and this is very exciting.
Yes, thank you, Debbie. And also, are you also looking for people to still join the interoperability group?
That would be fantastic. Yes, yes.
So then if people are interested, please do reach out to the leadership, reach out to Jon, reach out to Dr. Dahl or anyone else on this call, and we'll make sure to put you in touch with the right people. So thank you, Debbie. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So that brings us to the final part of the presentation section. Some of you may know, I'm sorry, if you could go back one, please. So some of you may know JP, James Poulter, who's a friend of the Open Voice Network. And below on the bottom of the slide, we do encourage you, if you're not already, to become a friend of the Open Voice Network by visiting this particular website, because as a group, we're always looking to improve and increase the number of people that are able to participate and contribute to the good work we're doing with conversational voice, chatbots, generative AI. We think 2023 is going to be a fabulous year, but we need your help. So please do consider visiting us at that URL at the bottom. Next slide, please. And with this, I will turn it back over to Jon for the summary and conclusion. Jon.
Michael, thank you. And thank you, Owita. Thank you, Debbie, and all of you for giving us your time here today. Nathan, if we can pull back up that slide there, that would be great. But
yes.
you know, what do we ask of you? What are we doing? What can we do together? This is a network. This is a community. Within our community, what can we do together? And here's my ask of you. My ask of you for the first half of 2023. On the Open Voice Network website, there's going to be a link to a survey. And I believe Alyssa and Evan have it up today. Tobias Martins is putting it together, and we're going to be asking about your pain points, your WIFM. We need to learn. It's going to be one of the ways in which we learn. Please go to the Open Voice Network website, find that survey, link to, click on it when it's there. Give us your guidance. Might you be willing to serve and test some of the code that Debbie was just showing a moment ago? Can you share with us within your vertical industry work and with your client work, the pain points, theirs and yours? What's your WIFM? We need to learn from you. We want to learn from you. A second thing, be a friend, invite a friend. Connect with the Open Voice Network and hear and allow us to be sharing our knowledge with you, and in turn, learning from you, learning your WIFMs. We've got to do a much better job of that in 2023. Also be thinking about reviewing a paper. Put your hand up to review a paper. To participate and help the Open Voice Network, you don't have to attend a weekly meeting. Now, doing that is great because it accelerates our work, but there may be a paper that you would review. There may be code you want to take a look at. There may be any number of things you can help us do. So in standby for new Open Voice Network Friends program, be a friend, invite someone else to be a friend. Amplify the news, social media, especially LinkedIn. We want to be getting 5,000 or more impressions of every one of our notices and posts. So please connect into the Open Voice Network site on LinkedIn. Make yourself a member of that, and then be looking to amplify the messaging, especially on LinkedIn, throughout social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, etc. But be thinking how we can get our messages out to others. Be suggesting and be asking, of course, we believe fully in transparent consent for those who may wish to be on our newsletter. And then finally, hey, money makes the world go round. Money is what accelerates our work. Money is what keeps this work going. So introductions to people who are decision makers, introductions to people who may want to endorse a program or support a program, contribute through crowdfunding. We have a crowdfunding site. We're a nonprofit. Every little bit helps. So your introductions, your speaking to people, your crowdfunding contributions, being a founder, being an advisor, doing a lot of things, but reach out directly to me should you have questions about that. Again, money is what makes this work happen. Money is what makes this work accelerate. And we would need your support, and we ask your support. So with that, Michael, I think it's time for Q&A. I think I've spoken too long, but thank you all for being here today.